Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurin Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Vyasa puja means the worship of Vyasa, or it can mean Vyasa's worship. We particularly celebrate this day as the worship of he who is the representative of Vyasa. There is the annual festival Guru Purnima, which is also called Vyasa Purnima, the day on which Vyasadeva appeared in this world. On that day, all Vedic Sampradayas, all members of Vedic Sampradayas, they worship their Guru, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He established the system of celebrating Vyasa Puja on his own appearance day. The Vyasa Puja for himself. As Saraswati. He is Saraswati. Vyasa and Saraswati are intimately linked. Vyasa gives the knowledge of the Vedas, he presents the Vedas, and Saraswati gives the inspiration. She is the principle by which Divya Gyan Hriday Prakashita, not just the principle, but the agency by which spiritual knowledge is revealed within the heart. Yasya deve para bhakti yatha deve tatha guru tasyaite katita hyartha prakashante mahatmana. Unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both God and Guru, all the imports of Vedic knowledge are revealed. So Saraswati does that. That is her service. Shuddha Saraswati, not the same Saraswati who presides over, or her expansion presides over apara vidya, or the mundane knowledge, and para vidya, spiritual knowledge. That is presided over by the fully spiritual Saraswati. So this worship of Vyasa is proper. In some religious systems, they insist only on worshipping the Supreme God, and no one else. No one else should be worshipped. Muslims, they object. Once I was speaking with some Muslims, and one of my disciples came before me, and this is in India, and offer obeisance, and he immediately objected that this is not right. He should not offer. Only obeisance should be offered to Allah, to no one else. So the Vedic conception is different. Seeing God everywhere and in everything, one can offer respects even to the ant. One doesn't normally formally do so. But seeing God's presence everywhere, this is sometimes misunderstood by the Mayavadis, to think that everything is God. but there is a difference seeing God's presence everywhere and in everything. So He, the Supreme, is Krishna, and He expands Himself into various forms for various purposes. One of those forms is Vyasa. He is called Vyasa or Veda Vyasa. Vyasa means who divides. So He divides the Veda. He's known as Veda Vyasa. He presents it. He edits it and presents it in such a way that it is accessible to people in this Kali Yuga. Accessible means comprehensible. So why is Vyasa worshipped in this way? By worshipping one's guru. This is unusual. We worship Krishna on many days. We just worshipped on Janmashtami. There's a set way of worshipping Him. And we celebrate various, just like Rama Navami, Varaha Dwadashi, Vamana Dwadashi. So we celebrate. There's a set format, but this Vyasa, worshipping Vyasa is in a very different way that we worship our Guru. Why in this particular way is Vyasa worshipped? Well, Vyasa is to be worshipped as the one who gave the bridge. He was the bridge preacher. He gave the bridge. The bridge is the Vedas, which gives the knowledge. Maya Mugdha Jiva Nahi. Krishna Swata Gyan Jiberi Kripa Koile Krishna Veda Puran. Krishna is Vyasa, seeing that all the jivas in this world are bewildered. They don't have the knowledge which is their inherent attribute. He compiled the Vedas and the Puranas. There's also in the Srimad Bhagavatam is said that Anartho Pashamang Sakshat Bhakti Yoga Madhog Sajay Lokasya Janato Vidvangs Chakre Satvata Sanghita. All the unwanted things of this world, all the extraneous matters, we can be relieved from that immediately relieved, simply by the process of Bhakti Yoga. But people don't know. Therefore the learned Vyasa compiled Srimad Bhagavatam. So Vyasa gave this exposition of reality, the Vedas. So that is the special contribution. All of the avatars, they come, there are Leela avatars who come to present Leelas, and most of them give transcendental knowledge, almost all of them, in various ways. They also perform various pastimes. They all come for the purpose of dharma samsthapanartha, for the purpose of re-establishing dharma. But especially Vyasa, he gives the knowledge that may be spoken by various avatars, but that is presented by Vyasa for the people of Kali Yuga. Vyasa comes at the end of Dwapara Yuga. At the end of every Dwapara Yuga there's a Vyasa. So what Vyasa gives, it's not so very easy to understand, because one reason being that everyone in this material world is bewildered, and especially in Kali Yuga people are especially bewildered. So Vyasa's contribution, the Vedic knowledge, that's been interpreted by different philosophers in different ways, and mostly they've just taken their own philosophies and superimposed them on the Vedas without taking the actual spirit of it directly. Karnadi, he gave the Vaisheshika, and Gautam gave Nyaya, Patanjali gave Yoga, the atheistic Kapila gave Sankhya, and the theistic Kapila gave Sankhya, which culminates in in Bhakti. Jaimini gave Mimamsa. So in different ways they have, these different philosophers have taken certain teachings of the Vedas and presented them as the essence of the Vedas. The Patanjali took yoga as the essence. The Jaimini, he took dharma. Atato dharma jignasa. In the writings of Mimamsa, the first statement, Jaimini, is now that we have attained, now we should inquire about dharma. There are many other philosophers also. Ashtavakra Dattatreya spoke in personalism, in Bhakti, Narada and Shandilya. They gave Bhakti, but Vyasa, apart from editing and presenting, compiling, editing, presenting the Vedas and the Puranas, he also compiled 2 books. He was the author of 2 books, the Mahabharata and Vedanta Sutra, which again they are eternal truths. So he presents in Vedanta Sutra, Atato Brahma Jignasa. Now we should inquire into the nature of Brahman, the ultimate spiritual reality. And in Vedanta Sutra, he combated or showed or defeated the wrong interpretations of the Vedas and established that Brahman is the actual subject of the Vedas. And several acharyas, they gave their further understanding of what Vyasa gave. What is Brahman? So Shankara, he was the first great acharya. He wasn't the first historically, but he was the first great acharya. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu referred to him as an acharya. Many Vaishnavas, they don't accept that he's even an acharya because he taught the wrong thing, mostly. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he refers to him as acharya, so we do also. But acharya in the sense that he established a Vedic path. That is done by precept must be there, a commentary on Vedanta, and by teaching that and by practice. So Shankara, he gave his commentary that Kevaladvaita, Brahman is Ekam Advitiya, means there's only Brahman, there's nothing else. And then Ramanuja challenged that, and then Madhva further challenged it, and other Vaishnavacharyas, Vishnu Swami, Nimbarka, the Vaishnavacharyas, they established what Krishna himself states in Bhagavad Gita very easily without going into all the intricate complexities. Krishna simply establishes Vedaisya sarvarahameva vedaha. In all the Vedas, I am that object of knowledge. I am the object of knowledge. Sarve Veda Yat Padam Amananti. That all the Vedas, they search after this point, and that point is Krishna. So there are many acharyas. They give the essence of the Vedas based on what Vyasa says. Others, they may avoid Vyasa, but if we have to follow Vedanta Sutra. So the Guru gives the essence of that, because especially in the beginning, no one can understand all these things. And in fact, Vedanta Sutra itself is the Vedanta, which means the Upanishads, and the commentary on that, Vedanta Sutra, is very difficult to understand for common people in the modern age. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Guru told him, the most unlikely person to tell this, that Murkha tumi tomar nahik Vedanta dika. You're a fool, you have no qualification to study Vedanta. He's saying to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Vedanta Krit, Vedavit. He is the compiler of the Vedanta and the knower of the Vedas. But to demonstrate the principle that in Kali Yuga most people are too dull-headed for all these things, and they tend to if at all they attempt to understand it, they misunderstand it. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ishvara Puri told Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you have no qualification to understand Vedanta, so just chant Hare Krishna. So, it's understood that especially in the beginning, people can't understand. So, the Guru, he should take the essence of that knowledge and present it. In the beginning, everyone can't understand. Systematic education should be there, but in the beginning, people should just be given the essence. So the Guru should, apart from being learned, he should understand what the essence of that knowledge is. The terms Pandit and Guru are not necessarily synonymous. So one who knows the essence, gives the essence, what Vyasa what he really wanted to communicate. Vyasa, his real task was to give Krishna consciousness, knowledge of Krishna. But he got distracted by bridge preaching, with writing all these Puranas and about yoga and going to the heavenly planets, getting Sri Aishvarya Prajapsavam, this becoming enamored by materialistic women is the proper definition of Stri. Or it can mean spiritual, who expands spiritual propensities also. We also have Vrajastrinam, the women of Vrindavan. They're not materialistic. So mundane women, mundane opulence, family, society, friendship and love. So Vyasa, he got diverted by all this stuff. That give people something that they can relate to. And just give a little bit of Krishna here and there. So Vyasa did that in compiling the Vedas and the Puranas, and he had compiled the Vedanta Sutra and the Mahabharata, but still it was, Narad said it's not, Narad, his guru, told him it's not clear. After doing all of that, he should have been satisfied, but he was feeling dissatisfied, and Narad came to him and said, the reason is because you haven't clearly given the essence. You've been so busy with all this bridge preaching, and you just built a bridge, but you didn't complete it, you didn't give the destination. It's just a bridge going nowhere. It's not very clear where you're supposed to go. Choose your bridge. Joto mat, toto pat. So, of course, that was Vyasa's job to do that. He's supposed to do that, but without giving Srimad Bhagavatam, it was all incomplete and imperfect. And without giving that knowledge, it's all meaningless. And even if he hadn't given all that knowledge, all that other extraneous knowledge, then even if he'd given Srimad Bhagavatam itself, that would have been enough, in one sense. So, the Guru is glorified because he gives the knowledge that Vyasa gave. We glorify Gurus in the Gauriya Vaishnava Sampradaya because they gave knowledge of Krishna, not because they gave knowledge of karma, jnana or yoga, or anything else. So, that on Vyasa Purnima, Guru Purnima, the Gurus, they're all glorified, and they can all be glorified in the same way, because they all do this. If they all should be doing the same thing, if they're not giving the message of Vyasa, then they're not a guru. They shouldn't be glorified. So every guru should be glorified. Guru means who gives the message of Vyasa as received in parampara. And in that sense, even a damn fool like me can be a guru. I'm quoting here Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada said that about himself, so in his humility, Srila Prabhupada said anyone can become a guru. You just repeat the message. So, anyone who gives that essence of spiritual knowledge, which is Krishna, surrender to Krishna, if he gives that to even one person, then he's glorious. The Guru's position is far greater than any prime minister or business magnate or Nobel laureate. Guru may be some not very well-known person, just to external vision like a very ordinary person. But if they take knowledge properly from their Guru, knowledge of Krishna, and give that even to one person, then they're glorious. Even if in the estimation of the world, they're just very ordinary people. And such a Guru is, the Guru who gives actual spiritual knowledge is more important than any other kind of Guru. One who gives material knowledge in one sense may be considered a Guru. One who teaches how to play musical instruments may be considered a Guru. The mother and father, they are Gurus. The first Guru, Shastra states, is the mother. But the one who gives spiritual knowledge of the truth, of who we are, who is God, what is our relationship, how to approach, that person is of far more importance, because prati janme janme shabe mata pita pai Krishna Guru nahe mile bhaja hohe hai. In every birth we get a father and a mother. In a dog birth we get a dog father and mother. In a cat birth we get a cat father and a mother. But most jivas in this world don't get Guru. So if we do, we should understand the importance of that and worship in our heart. Bhaja hohiyai. So who gives that knowledge is glorious. So every Guru is to be glorified, but at the same time, even though there be many thousands of Gurus in the world, and Srila Prabhupada said there should be again thousands of Gurus in the world. He said every neighborhood should have a Guru. Not that you can just like the kings used to knight someone by putting a sword on their shoulder and said, now your name is Sir So-and-so. So it's not, or in the traditional system, a boy born in a Brahmin family is given a thread, but it's not just by giving a thread that they become a Brahmin. So you can appoint someone as a Guru, but it's, qualification should be there. Training. The boy is given a thread, but he has to be trained. Then he can actually be a Brahmana. So in the same way, Guru you just can't rubber stamp. They have to actually have that quality. So, there have been many thousands of Gurus, bona fide Gurus in the world who have given spiritual knowledge and trained their disciples, delivered their disciples. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he introduced this celebration of Vyasa puja on his own appearance day. As the representative of Saraswati. Every Guru is representative of Vyasa, of Saraswati. And his disciples have followed that tradition, that apart from the general worship of Guru, in gratefulness for what he has given, the message of Vyasa, for their own specific contribution. So there have been many, many thousands of Gurus And there will be many, many thousands, even though the whole world is going to hell. But Krishna's mercy, He sends persons into this world who speak from beyond the platform of this world to take us beyond this world. But still, everyone has their own personality. They're different people. That is the teaching of Vaishnavism. Everyone is an individual. They all have their individual personality. And although every guru is glorious for giving spiritual knowledge, clearly, although in one sense it may be said that, well, they're all the same because they all represent Vyasa, but in another sense, clearly, some gurus have given tremendous contributions to the world, and others have given tremendous contributions just to a few people. So the contribution is the same in one sense, but in another sense, because those who have given to many by their spiritual prowess, they've brought the message of Vyasa, the teachings of Vyasa to many, so they are very special. And I mentioned the names of Ramanuja, Madhva, his sampradaya is Madhva sampradaya. So, no one in their sampradayas to the present day would dream of thinking that they're on the same level. Even there have been many great acharyas in their sampradayas, but those great acharyas are recognized as great because they continued to broadcast, amplify, clarify, and make relevant the teachings of the sampradaya acharyas. So, today we're celebrating the Vyasa puja of Srila Prabhupada, and undoubtedly Srila Prabhupada is exceptional among gurus. Vyasadeva came to give this knowledge, sent by Krishna. He is Vishnu avatar. And what Vyasadeva gave, that was under severe attack from those persons who rejected the Vedas. Nindasi yagya vidheraha shruti jatam. The persons, they blasphemed the Vedas because of the yagyas, which are the central point of Vedic culture in Treta Yoga especially, and continued into Dwapara Yoga. That Buddha, he didn't like this. Yagyas is being misused for the purpose of animal killing. So he decried that. So the whole reverence for the Vedas was under attack. But Shankaracharya re-established the respect for the Vedas. So indirectly he upheld the position of Vyasa. And if we examine his teachings very carefully, we can find that clearly he was a Vaishnava. I mean, even in the very first verse of his Gita commentary, he states, although his whole teaching, as it's generally understood and as he generally presented it, was to uphold the avyakta, the unmanifest. But he states, Narayana paro vyaktat, that Narayana is beyond this unmanifest. So but his supposed followers, they can't find that. They don't see it because they don't want to see it. Or they reinterpret it in some way. So, Vyasa, his teachings, they were indirectly protected by Shankara. And actually Shankara, he gave a platform for the Vaishnava Acharyas to present the actual conclusion of the supremacy of Vishnu. The Shankara, he systematically presented the Vedic philosophy, but with all the wrong conclusions. So the Vaishnava Acharyas came and said, yes, that's true, but it means this, not that. This interpretation is incorrect. The correct interpretation, Sarve Veda Yat Padam Amananti, the proper in understanding is Krishna or Vishnu. They mostly presented Vishnu. They have slightly different positions. Ramanuja, he sees Narayana as the original form. Madhva, he says that all the forms are you can't differentiate any form. Nimbarka, he sees Krishna as supreme. And Vishnu Swami is not so clear his teeth, but his modern follower is Vallabha, who clearly sees Krishna as supreme. But anyway, basically, they all upheld this point that the real teachings of the Vedas are Krishna, Vishnu, the supremacy of Vishnu. So Vyasa gave that, Shankara protected it, the Vaishnava Acharyas established Vishnu is supreme, and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he extracted the essence by preaching Srimad Bhagavatam. The different Vaishnava Acharyas, because after all the Vedas, they culminate in the Upanishads, and Vyasa himself gave Vedanta Sutra, and Shankara commented on that. So in opposition to Shankara, the Vaishnava Acharyas, they commented on Vedanta. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he took Srimad Bhagavatam as the natural commentary on the Vedanta. And therefore, he took in one stroke, he took the whole spiritual discussion away from this very complex grammatical study, grammatical and hermeneutical study, exegetical study. That word appears in Srila Prabhupada's books, by the way, exegetical study of Vedanta. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu put the emphasis on Srimad Bhagavatam, which gives all the knowledge of the Vedas mixed with bhakti, very, very thickly with bhakti ras. So what the previous acharyas gave, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately brought it to the essence. When he met the Mayavadis at Varanasi, they asked him, all right, you're a good Vedanta scholar, but why are you singing and dancing? What's that got to do with Vedanta? So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained that. He gave the essence. And that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what he gave the essence, which is to worship Krishna. So the acharyas in the parampara of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what he spoke about, they gave extensive writings, both philosophically, to uphold Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's position, and they brought out even more than was given in Srimad Bhagavatam, in the sense that much of what was not directly expressed in Bhagavatam was revealed, especially by Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, Jiva Goswami, in their writings. So that's revealed knowledge. So they developed a tremendous culture of Krishna Bhakti. based on chanting the holy names and Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, and a tremendous philosophical edifice, especially Sri Jiva Goswami gave that, Baladev Vidya Bhushan. But in course of time, that became what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to revive. What is that? Vrindavana Keli Rasa Luptam. What that which was lost, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he came to revive that. But again it became lost. Almost lost, practically lost. Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's sampradaya sunk into materialism, with people misinterpreting his message and taking it as a means to live comfortably, support their families, the gurus. It's a good business. You just be spiritual and take the money. And then you can be respected and not have to do any work. Of course, it's not that every caste Goswami was so materialistic. Many of them were serious practitioners, but they didn't demand of their disciples any particular standard. Though they may have been serious practitioners themselves, we find in the caste Goswami lines, the Advaita Vangsha, Nityananda Vangsha, many were good scholars, good practitioners, but they didn't demand from their disciples that their disciples follow anything strictly. So in this way the sampradaya became broken down and there are various Sahajya sects. So because the gurus who are supposed to represent Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, were supposed to represent Vyasa, they weren't doing what they're supposed to do properly. They didn't train their disciples properly because they had some other interest also. So the whole sampradaya became practically lost until Bhaktivinoda Thakur started the work of reviving that. And then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he did that very strongly. But all that which came down from Vyasa through all the acharyas to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it's down through Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. It's a great long story. There's you could make a huge, it requires a huge job to compile all this history and show the flow. Just like there's one famous history of the Western world by Will Durant and his wife, although she doesn't get credited because she didn't want to be. The history of the Western world. And he actually starts by saying that actually the whole Western world has its origin in the Eastern world. And he traces all the history and all the important figures. And it's a huge work. So that's also required. How the Vedic knowledge is eternally existing. Vyasa, he compiled that for Kali Yuga. How that got lost, and then again, actually there is a history of Indian philosophy by one Dasgupta, so it's called the History of Indian Philosophy, but even though it's an extensive work, it's not taken very serious. Well, it's clear that there are many errors in it, which is not surprising if you only have one lifetime to do such a big job. But if there are too many errors, then it becomes not very conclusive, not very helpful. So we actually need that, the whole tracing out. As modern people are very historically minded, they criticize the Indian academic ethos because they're not concerned with historicity, although actually they are. But not in the same sense, because just like in the Puranas, there are lists of the Vangshas of the kings, the dynasties of the kings. But they're more concerned with the important events, knowing that anyway time goes round and round and round, so what does it matter? Sometimes people say, well, Ram is superior because he became before Krishna. It's a statement. Because who came first, the chicken or the egg? What's the answer? Who knows the answer? Krishna came first. That's the answer. Krishna creates everything. Via Lord Brahma, he gives the material energy, and then Lord Brahma cooks it all up, and he makes chicken. Well, the birds come from, who's that? Kadru and Kashyapa, and no, the snakes come from Kadru, and then, so, who's that? The mother of the birds? Vinata. So, so it's all circular time. There's Satya Yoga, Treta Yoga, Dwapara Yoga, Kali Yoga, and everything's a complete mess. And then again there's Satya Yoga, and it goes round and round and round. So we may not be so much concerned as Will Durand was with giving all the history of all the kings and all the queens and all the bishops and popes and anti-popes and dictators and all this kind of thing, because it all boils down to a few words. Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi, Adhyatmik, Adi Bhautik, Adi Daivik, Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moha, Mada, Matsara. In a few words you can describe the whole history of the world. Krishna does in 2 words. He boils it down to 2 words. Dukhalayama Shashvatam. That's all. So all this intricate knowledge is not required. But the essence of all that knowledge is Krishna consciousness. That Srila Prabhupada brought to the world, to the proud Western world, that we are superior. We know better. We have made flying machines. Well, there is a word in Sanskrit called Vimana, which means a flying machine. We discovered the atom. Well, there is a word in Sanskrit, Paramana, which means the atom. And so on and so on and so on. Srila Prabhupada brought this knowledge, and he brought the essence, which is surrender to Krishna, chant Hare Krishna, fulfilling the mission of Vyasa. And it wasn't just that, well, he went to the West and then he gave a few lectures, but how he gave this knowledge. We worship the representatives of Vyasa because they gave knowledge, but what is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pradhan? What's that? The contribution. That is his, he gives knowledge, and the fruit of knowledge is love of Krishna. So there's not exactly knowledge in itself. But what is that knowledge, what does that lead us to? Knowledge in itself isn't very useful. You can be qualified as a doctor, but if you don't practice as a doctor, then it doesn't help anyone. Or we may know that we shouldn't eat too much, but if we do, you still get sick. Just because we know that we shouldn't eat too much, we say, well, I know I shouldn't eat too much, but knowing doesn't help us if we don't follow that. So, knowledge in itself is required, but what is the fruit of knowledge? That is love of Krishna, which ultimately doesn't depend on knowledge, but in our present state, we require that knowledge so that we can start to act in a way that we can revive our dormant love for Krishna. So we see that Srila Prabhupada, we hear so much about Prabhupada, we should do. We hear many anecdotes of Srila Prabhupada. We hear much about his kindness, his love, his mercy, his compassion. We should do. But if we see what Srila Prabhupada actually did and how he spread Krishna consciousness, what was Srila Prabhupada's main activity, if we see in terms of time? Just like Srila Prabhupada himself, he noted that although undoubtedly Krishna's pastimes with the gopis are the essence, but practically we see in the descriptions of Krishna's pastimes, there's much more description of him killing demons than there is of dancing with gopis. So of course when he danced with the gopis, it was a very long dance. It would extend. Even it might seem like one night, but that would extend into one night of Brahma, although everyone else couldn't note or understand that. But anyway, in the same way we see that Srila Prabhupada, he sometimes joked with his disciples, sometimes chastised them, sometimes said very endearing things or did some endearing actions. But what he practically did as an ideal guru, literally day and night, was speak philosophy and give knowledge of Krishna, which is that's what distinguishes a guru from a non-guru. A guru teaches the knowledge by which one can achieve the highest benefits. Tasmad gurum prapadyeta jignasu shreya uttamam. One should approach a guru for the sake of inquiring into one's highest benefit. So Srila Prabhupada practically did that. He said, and especially the knowledge that he wanted to communicate to all future generations, the essence of that knowledge he gave in his books. And he said, if you want to know me, read my books. So, we should want to know Srila Prabhupada. We should read his books. We should live according to that also. Srila Prabhupada said we should make Srimad Bhagavatam our life, which means that we should tat shrinvan supatan vicharana paro. This is stated in Bhagavatam itself, that we should carefully recite, or we should hear Srimad Bhagavatam. We should carefully recite or read Srimad Bhagavatam, and we should apply our intelligence to understand the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, which means that we should also live it and we should preach it. So, to know Srila Prabhupada, we should know what his teachings are, and we have to be proper receptacles for receiving that knowledge. Proper receptacles means we shouldn't interpret it according to our own desire. That's what happened, how the teachings of Lord Chaitanya very quickly got mangled into something quite different from what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave. Because different people had different personal agendas which they wanted to fulfill. It may be a small thing in the beginning. Someone's a devotee, they're practicing Krishna consciousness, but they have some personal desire and that becomes fulfilled via bhakti. This is one of the pitfalls that Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he warns against. That what we receive from bhakti, the byproducts of that, we become attached to that. Just like, for instance, someone is a guru in Krishna consciousness. He's teaching others, and others, according to the Vedic system, they offer dakshina. So maybe the dakshina doesn't have to be a monetary donation, but it often is. And then they may think, well, I have so much money and it's all meant for Krishna's service, but I'm also serving Krishna. And I get so much money, so I can spend for some luxury for myself. Why not? And although they're serving Krishna, but it's all justified in the name of yukta vairagya, but some seed of personal desire to enjoy this world may have entered. Not necessarily, but it may be like that. Or someone else sees that and they don't understand clearly. They say, oh, guru, yeah, guru means you make disciples and they give you money, and it's better than working in an office or a factory. So, yeah, let me become a guru and I'll serve Krishna, and that will look after my family maintenance problems also. But that mixture of desire means that it's not pure devotional service. And then that gradually becomes the norm. Just like in our movement, devotees get paid. And in the beginning the idea might be that, well, alright, they're doing good service and they require something for their family maintenance, but then it becomes a job. The attitude changes. So that someone is given a stipend for doing pujari service, and then they ask for extra pay for overtime for staying up late on Janmashtami. This is a fact. A temple president told me. And they're legally they're employed. It's all, they just can't give money out of the box. They have to do it legally. So originally the idea may be, I want to serve the deities, but I also have to look after my family, so I need some, but then the motive changes. So it may be very subtle. These contaminations may enter, and then it just becomes the norm. I'm just giving one example. There may be many, many examples. So Srila Prabhupada's books, they give the actual standard of pure devotional service. The thread running throughout all of Srila Prabhupada's books is, and actually through all the writings of all the sampradaya, all the acharyas of the sampradaya, real devotees, anyabhilashita shunyam jnanakamadyanavritam anukulyena krishnanushilanam bhaktirutama. Devotional service should be executed cultivating the spirit of no other desire than to serve Krishna. This is the kind of bhakti that Srila Prabhupada came to teach us, to give us. If there's anything compromised, then it becomes problematic. At the same time, Srila Prabhupada, as we heard in Bhakti Charu Maharaj's offering, and we hear again and again and again, if we read Prabhupada's books, listen to his lectures, Srila Prabhupada wanted to introduce Varnashram, which means that engaging people on different levels, but the brahmanas, or those who are supposed to be pure devotees, knowledgeable, they're supposed to lead the society. Not that, now we're getting into controversial topics. I might get banned from here also. Yeah, brahmanas, selfless people are supposed to lead. Selflessness is required. Well, I could just extrapolate that example, and we see it actually. That I gave the example of how payment, although started innocuously, becomes insidious. It means that it starts off without any, in a minor way, without any bad intention, but the bad intention comes. So in running an institution, big buildings, you need good managers and people good at bringing in the money. It may seem like that, although Srila Prabhupada, he wanted to run this movement on Brahminical principles. Just worship Krishna and everything will come. That doesn't mean that you just worship Krishna and just expect people to drive in from Belfast and give you $1,000 checks all the time. Whoops, pounds. There has to be outgoing preaching, canvassing, managing. But often we find that devotees who are good in money acquisition, who have a mind for that, they become the leader because they're good at running the show, keeping the show running on. Everything in this world runs on money. And then but then we see that often Krishna consciousness becomes very much like money consciousness. First of all, see the money's there, and then we'll think about everything else. So we should know Srila Prabhupada. We're not against money. We bring the money. I think here especially, not only here, but in many centers. Bring the money. Use it for serving Krishna. But understand that our purpose is to practice and propagate pure devotional service with no material desire. And even if we have a very beautiful temple with gorgeous arrangements and very good festivals, if there's no spirit of complete surrender to Krishna, if it's a compromised spirit, then Krishna cannot be fully satisfied. We're not saying not satisfied, but He's fully satisfied with the spirit of complete devotion to Him. So let us keep Srila Prabhupada in the center. We often hear that, by keeping his teachings in the center. Keep his teachings in the center means especially we have to individually study his books and base our movement on those teachings. There's a lot of work to do in distilling his teachings also, because he gave so many teachings. So his teachings on various topics, and how to apply them in the present day. Spiritual life is dynamic because the world means yogachati iti jagat, which is always moving as the world. So the world is always changing in some ways. In some ways it's just the same. It's just the same old story. Birth, death, old age and disease. But in some way, culture, human culture, especially in Kali Yuga, it's always changing and unclear. The modern age is very unclear. So how to present those teachings? We have to be aware of that also, not become stuck in some time warp, anachronistic. But we should know Srila Prabhupada by knowing his teachings. And that is really the worship of the Guru. The worship of the Guru is not simply by flowers and fruits. That should be there, that must be there. But the real worship is by taking what he came to give, reciprocating with him by taking the teachings that he comes to give and applying them in our lives, and preaching those teachings to others also. Srila Prabhupada himself stressed so many times, Jare deko tare kaha, Krishna upadesh, amaragya guru hoya taro edesh. He wanted all his disciples to become gurus and preach to whoever they met the message of Krishna. So that message of course means received in parampara. We received through Srila Prabhupada. He is not just another guru, if we can use that phrase, but he is the great Acharya who was sent by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. His books are not just some other books that nowadays many devotees are writing, which is good, if they're writing in pursuance of the teachings of the parampara as received through Srila Prabhupada. But we shouldn't think, well, there are so many books and Prabhupada's books are just some other books. But we should know that they are the teachings that are given by Krishna's representative who he sent to the world to fulfill the mission of Krishna as received through Vyasa, as received through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as received through all the previous acharyas. So Srila Prabhupada's books, they are extraordinary in all respects. Srila Prabhupada, while telling that that we should all be gurus, he also several times said that book distribution is the guru's business. So he very much stressed on the distribution of his books. And contrary to contemporary mythology within our society, there's quite a lot of it in various ways. One of them is that we should only distribute Srila Prabhupada's books. When Srila Prabhupada wanted his disciples to write, he encouraged that and even told them to do it. And he wanted those books distributed also. So we should fill up all the libraries of the world with Krishna conscious books. Every subject should have its Krishna conscious perspective. Of course, you can have the whole perspective in 2 words. The whole perspective, you can have all the history, sociology, everything of all the humanities in 2 words. Dukhalayam ashashvatam. Everything in this world is temporary and miserable. But many, many books should be there, all glorifying Krishna and Krishna's teachings in various ways. So Srila Prabhupada showed by his personal example what it meant to be a guru in the modern world. Of course, the way Srila Prabhupada lived and acted is not the only model. One can also be a guru to one's family. One can be a guru to one's neighborhood or one's village or within a certain field. But Srila Prabhupada showed how that is possible to present the Vedic teachings in the modern world, being very faithful to Vyasadev's teachings and at the same time presenting them in a culture far removed from that in which the Vedic teachings had ever been taught before. At the same time, Srila Prabhupada, he didn't abandon the Vedic culture, but he wanted to establish that. There are so many important points to discuss, but I'll finish now, unless there are any questions about this or comments.
Sometimes people argue that Srila Prabhupada, who translated everything, Sanskrit word to word meaning or quote and translation, then you read that one and then you worship Radha Krishna. And many other questions are Guru or spiritual master. So why do we need to do it?
Sometimes people say that Srila Prabhupada translated everything and he said to worship Radha Krishna, so what do you need a guru for? And then you go and read the books and see. Why did Srila Prabhupada write so many books? Why didn't he just write worship Radha and Krishna? 4 words. Sometimes people say that. Sometimes, you mean more than one time? More than one, and there's one person. Yeah, but there are so many nutcases all over the world. We don't have to, make a philosophical case against every nutcase. Why do you need a guru? Well, there is in that Science of Self-Realization book, you can see the first chapter, the absolute necessity of accepting a spiritual master. So if he says that Prabhupada said to worship Radha and Krishna, well, Prabhupada also said this, you show him that book. You show him that essay. But anyone who says that is anyway not sincere, actually. They're not actually interested in worshipping Radha and Krishna. They're interested in their own sense gratification in the name of worshipping Radha and Krishna. Otherwise they wouldn't say such a thing. How will you even know who are Radha and Krishna and how to worship them unless you're taught and trained? So it's a ridiculous, that's what I'm saying. Whoever says that is just a nutcase. They may become a guru of others, telling others that you just worship Radha and Krishna, you don't need a guru. Many people, they do that. They say you don't need a guru. Who is that? There are several. Dr. Radha Krishna, he was one. No, not Krishnamurti. He said you don't need a guru. He said don't. And who is that who said don't read books? Yeah, that's Krishnamurti. He said it's recorded in his book, don't read books. Years ago, when this Kavi mania, Stephen Kavi was the great guru of ISKCON. I saw in one town president's office one book by him. So he's out of fashion now. These fashions come and go. In the world he was big, and now he's not so big. So I thought, what's all this? What's all this? Kavi, wherever you go, Kavi said this, Kavi said that. Why are they all talking about Kavi? So I opened his book, and I opened a page, and he had his list. He gave a list of the qualities of a perfect person according to Stephen Covey. So one of the things is, he wrote, there's some good things there also, but out of the context of Krishna consciousness, of course. So he said that one of the qualities of what he said is a really great person is he does not become anyone's disciple. And he's writing he's known as a management guru himself. So just contradictory. You can show this person who's saying that Srila Prabhupada said this. That you can show that Science of Self-Realization, the first essay that's recorded in there. Anything else? Yeah.
If somebody wanted to write a book, but they weren't so qualified, you could say, well, they shouldn't write because they're not so qualified. But they know something which may help some people.
Someone wants to write a book, but they're not so qualified, but they know something which can help some people. Well, if you're going to write a book which is supposed to systematically and authoritatively and convincingly present a position, you should thoroughly know what that position is. As I included in one section in that book I made on speaking strongly in Srila Prabhupada's service, Srila Prabhupada said that don't go and preach in some specialized field unless you know it properly. So if you're not sure, then you can become sure. You can study, or you distribute Prabhupada's books. If you don't know properly, then better not write a book. Why write a book if you don't know the subject? You can write in the introduction, I'm writing this book about this subject, but I don't really know it well, so sorry if I'm not presenting it properly. Who will want to? What is the value of such a book? Yeah.
Many years ago, when I was young, I heard a class by Shamasunda's group.
Which Shamasundar? There's so many Shamasundars.
Shamasunda's group started the preaching and learning.
Oh, Shamasundar, 1967. Yeah.
He gave a class, and I believe it was Srila Prabhupada's parents as well. And he said something that really hit me.
What did he say?
He said that the difference between the devotees who were in the mood that was there when Prabhupada was personal planet, and the mood in which he perceived ISKCON at that time, which was about 16 or 17 years ago, is that devotees when Srila Prabhupada was personally present, they jumped with the faith, take a jump, and Krishna will catch it. And so they were more into that mood, and he said, Krishna did catch us.
Yeah.
He gave the example that one time he was walking with his former wife, Mother Malati, to Mangalarti, and there was a big bill to be paid in a buried place, and he said they were just walking to Mangalarti in freezing cold because they didn't even have a fare to ride on the tube or anything. And Malati said to him, what's that in the wind? And he said, where? And she said, at your ankles, look. All these 10-pound notes blowing in the wind. So she just grabbed her children and made it into a bag and we packed it all in.
Yeah.
Literally, they stopped counting at the exact amount of the bill.
Yeah. I heard him tell that also. Although I thought it was in San Francisco with $100 notes. Anyway.
Something like that 17 years ago. But it made a profound effect on how I functioned in that I began to see that I had to, as he expressed, he said, Moses, the ocean didn't open until he took the first step. He said, now we have meetings before we do anything. He said, we need a PhD before we can peel a carrot in the kitchen of Krishna. We need this. He said, but really we have to look from where we're coming from, from Srila Prabhupada.
Complete faith, and then faith can move mountains. Jesus said that, didn't it? Anyone? Jesus said that, faith can move mountains. Now you have this whole idea, faith can vanish clouds. Anyway.
Also perceive this person in the Tribuna because he would invite us to go to a festival. The hall wouldn't be paid for, it'd be paid for later, happened to be passed around or something. He'd ask us, do you want to come and help with the feast, cook the feast? We'd say yes. You have money to buy some gas? I'd say okay. You have money to buy some knives? We'd say okay. You have money to buy some vegetables? So literally we would go with nothing. And then you would see people joining, He would go to festivals, he would engage people and see people joining. Because I was thinking a little bit that maybe I'm just naive, but my understanding is maybe I'm very naive, because I've functioned ever since I heard that lecture on that precept, that if you just jump, Krishna...
If you just jump, Krishna will catch you. Pure devotion is contagious. That was the disease that Prabhupada spread, the infection. At the same time, Srila Prabhupada, who was very concerned with the organization of the movement, and he did want to establish Varnashram. That's a very big discussion, but understanding that what they call Max Weber called the institutionalization of charisma, that pure devotees, they just don't drop out of trees every moment. And we have to carry it on, even when, just like Shamasundar himself, for instance, he gave that example, but then he jumped in the wrong way, right? The fact is that he was out of Krishna consciousness for many years. So we do need to have some nets also for gradual, systematic presentation of Krishna consciousness. The thing is, if it becomes so systematic, then there's no room for Tribhuvanath. He didn't fit in, right? He could never fit in because he was the most uninstitutionalizable person. Yeah, how to keep the spirit alive. Religious institution need your Francis of Assisi's and your Tribhuvanaths, but they're a pain in the neck for the institution while they're there. They need them to give the institution some legitimacy. Otherwise it's just formulae and rituals. It descends into that. Hare Krishna. All glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. They can also become a ritual. Don't make it a ritual saying Srila Prabhupada ki jai. How to keep it alive. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol, Hari Hari, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande, Hari Bol. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Oh, yeah. Hare Krishna. I'll do it to you too. Bhagavadanand Prabhu ki jai. Jai Shri Shri Radha Govinda. It's their night outfit. Going for a dance tonight, huh? They're going for a dance tonight. Doesn't look like, like bedtime clothing.